Good evening, YouTube. This is Julian Mars coming at you once more. Today I'm not going to give you a deck or rundown, or, well, as to say, I'm not going to give you a deck yet. This is only part 1. In part 2, you will see my Blackwing deck build as a complimentary to this video. This video is for you duelists out there who just getting started. Now I know what you're thinking. What's up with the vest? What's up with the jacket and all that? That's because today we're going to talk a little bit about construction. That's right. I'm talking about building a deck. I know most of you guys out there is thinking, alright, I know how to build a deck. I just put some cards together, or I buy a structured deck or whatever and add some cards to it. No, wrong. You can't just go out there and buy any deck and then make some tweaks to it and call it your deck. You got to start from scratch. You want to buy a structured deck? Sure, go ahead. That'll give you most of the cards you need, but not all of them. The structured deck is basically an upgrade of a starter deck, and we all remember what starter decks were, right? Starter decks to give you 1 or 2 of the cards you need, then you can go on your own from there. Structured deck, they more or less do half the work for you. You just gotta fill in the blanks. But for those of you who are true duelists, like myself, you know that it's better to start from scratch and work your way up from there. Okay, so here we go. First order of business, you're going to want to choose a deck type. Now everybody know there are a bunch of monsters out there. You got warriors, spellcasters, fiends, fairies, most recently these worms and other such things. And that's just the type of monsters you're dealing with. You know, in the little card description, the little thing up there say warriors, spellcasters, whatever. That's the type of monster you're dealing with. Now for the attributes, which is the little circle on the top right hand corner of the thing right above the stars, with some decks you need to focus on that as well as the type of monster you're dealing with, or rather you need to focus on that more than the type of monster you're dealing with, because for decks like the Infernities and whatnot, you got all kind of monsters, fiends, warriors, insects, so on and so forth. But for this tutorial, I'm going to be using the Blackwings because I feel they are right for what I'm trying to do here. Okay, so for instance, Sirocco the Dawn, a dark attribute monster, level 5, winged beast, and like all the other monsters in the deck, it's a winged beast type. Now see there, you already said, because you got all the right type of monsters you're dealing with. Okay. Secondly, when you're building a deck and you got your monsters, you need to focus on them monsters. Because let's face it, you can't want to do without them. So focus on their abilities, their attributes, their attributes, their levels, all of that. Number 3, balance in the deck. Now with most decks you find that you're all over the place. You're relying on one particular level of monster than another. Like with some warrior decks, you're relying on level 4s or 3s to pull off moves instead of high levels like 5, 8 and whatnot. And if you're running a dragon deck, like with most dragons, most of your monsters, they're going to be level 7 and higher. So even though that's the type of thing you're dealing with, you need to limit the number of high ranking monsters you got. Like if you work in level 5s, if you work in level 5, 6, 7, 8 in your deck, you need to limit them each. Like you could go 3 level 8s, 2 or 3 level 7s, 1 level 6, 1 level 5, something like that. But you got to keep the main focus on the level 4s and below, because they are most likely going to be the searchers, the main players in your deck. They will help you pull off the big moves to get the big boys out there. But more on that later. Next up, you got to choose the right spells. Spells and traps. Now with all decks, you see basic, everyday, standard type of cards. Like say with spell cards, you're looking at MST, Part of Duality. In the case of Black Wings or any deck heavy in dark monsters, you're looking at Allure of Darkness or Dark World Dealings, things like that. Now, with the traps, those get less common, more or less customized. I'm talking Bottomless Trap Hole, Magic Cylinder, Breakthrough Skills, so on and so forth. Torrential Tribute, Wiretap, whatever. But outside those cards, those main cards, you need to specialize your spells and traps to your monsters. Like for instance, if you're working a dragon deck, you need to, I don't know, work in like a Flute of Summoning Dragon or Dragon Valley or whatever. Something that'll help you either add the right type of monster to your hand or allow you to special summon it to the field. And that's what your spells should do. Your spells should allow you to either search your deck, special summon a monster, bring a monster back from the grave, or shut down your opponent's attack or destroy one of their monsters. That's what your spells should do. As for your traps should mainly focus on protecting your monsters and your life points. Things like what I said earlier, Magic Cylinder, Draining Shield, those things both protect your monsters and your life points. More recently, you got Scrap Iron Scarecrow, Torrential Tribute, but that's been around for a little while, but it works the same. Next, we're talking balance between the types of cards. Now, depending on the type of deck you're building, that would depend on the ratio between monsters and spells and traps. Like my Black Wings, for instance, I'm running 24 monsters, 10 spells, 6 traps. But with some other decks, like with spellcasters, such as the spell counter ones and the spellbook spellcasters, those type of decks would rely heavily on the spell cards, because the spell cards would be what triggers your monster's effects. So you would find that the spells would outnumber the monsters, but that would be a good thing. Now, for the number of cards in your deck itself, you should stick between 40 to maybe 43 cards. Any more than that would slow down your deck's progress, and you wouldn't be able to pull off the big plays you want to pull off when you want to pull them off or when you need to pull them off. Instead, you'll be drawing a bunch of cards you don't need, or you just be stalling for time, and it just gets monotonous after that. Next, your extra deck. Now, your extra deck should complement your main deck. If you got a deck full of warriors, heads up tip, throw in a solidarity in there, so that way when you got some warriors in your grave and you bust out a warrior, he gets extra attacks. On top of that, if you were able to synchro summon a warrior type monster or Xyz a warrior type monster, he would also get a power boost. But if you got a warrior type deck and a dragon type extra deck full of dragon monsters, there's no consistency. You're breaking down the whole thing. You're slowing yourself down. Maintain consistency. Not to say you can't put 1 or 2 dragons in there or whatever, but again, we'll get to that later. Now, at this point, I like to point out a personal view of mine. Now, I saw today they bringing out these new cards called Fluffle, which is basically a bunch of monsters that look like plush toys, like little teddy bears, little fluffy bunny rabbits. You see little kids or little girls playing with. What the hell is this game turning into? I mean, come on, you got some cards out there now that are already gender challenged. Now you want to do this? Come on, man. And then you're gonna have some fellas out there playing with these things. A big old 25, 30-year-old man playing with little teddy bears. It's about enough. Got one buddy now playing with my Dolces. I can't do that fella no more. Every time I do them, I just be getting hungry. He be putting out Pudding Princess and all these little cupcake puppies and parfait sheep. talking about it now making me a little hungry. Next, I want to talk monster effects. Now this game ain't like how it used to be back in my day. In my day, half your deck was normal monsters. These days, all your monsters are effect monsters. You need to balance out your monsters' effects with your deck. Now, there are basically three types of effects you want to focus on. Alright? There are search effects that allows you to search your deck to get a specific type of card out. Then you got reborn effects, which allows you to bring back a card from your graveyard or a monster or whatever. Then you got stall out effects, which will cause monster effects that will stall out your opponents. I know you're probably thinking, okay, that's what the spells and traps are for, but no, you can't rely on your spells and traps, because one MST or one spell reclamation or whatever, and your trap and your spell or trap is shut down, and you're stuck with whatever you got. Folk, let your monsters do most of the work. Don't just have them sitting out there. Lastly, I like to say that's about it. Just balance out all your stuff, keep your decks consistent, and even out the playing field with all your monsters and stuff. Now, I'm running out of time here. Now with the extra deck, you could throw in some standard extra deck monsters like Stardust, Black Rose, Crimson Blader, or whatnot. Just throw those in there with them, and I feel that you will always win. Alright? Catch you later, YouTube.